Okay, let's recite together.
Towards the one, the perfection of love, harmony, and beauty, the only being, united with all living souls, who form the embodiment of the Master, the Spirit of Christ. Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim.
Dear family, dear friends, and dear Zoom participants, we haven't got it set up that we can see you, so we have no idea who's with us.
See and hear you.
Somebody said something, so we said we're happy you could join us, and we're in the Khankah Sam kitchen. My dear brother Jonathan and Davey, myself, and Amina. I want to share some stories. Wali's grandkids are here, some of them. Want to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, sure. I'm naive, but you guys have probably seen me bathe in the sink before. Yeah, happy to be here. This is my sister.
Well, go ahead. The first being. So I thought we could sing a little just to open the space up with our feeling and connect our hearts. And I did speak to Sapura, and she suggested, she said she'd be with us in spirit, that we start with a little silence, so we give Wali a chance to pour his blessings into our heart and our support for his journey. And then just spend some time telling stories about him and remembering him and bringing him into the room. How dear he was to us. And maybe we'll start up here, and maybe there'll be time for some of you as well. So I thought what we could sing, I brought this instrument today because it has such a kind of a mellow sound. You know, it's a low sound. Called a laughter, like an oud. When I was in the Maui Sufi camp, 2 years ago, there was a
Speak up.
a Hindustani.
Speak up.
Speak up. Okay. There was a Hindustani woman who came, a young woman, and we started talking. It turned out her name was Rahima. So she was Muslim birth. And she said, she came from an Ismaili Sufi family. So I said, wow, that's amazing. And I speak a little bit of the language in Urdu, so I it's kind of very proud to share a story with her in her tongue. And I said, did you do zikr? She said, we did zikr all the time. So I said, teach me some Ismaili zikrs. So this particular Ismaili zikr, which I think most of you already know, is the zikr that they use when someone has passed away. They usually have that person's body, the way I was told, I've never seen, they have their person's body in the middle of the room, and everyone sings this zikr and walks with them. So here we go. La Women's voices. You can do it. Come on, you can sing. Everybody's voices. Okay, the men's voices. Everybody. Let's sing. So let's just sit on the breath. Evoke our dear brother. Evoke our connection.
House Monday night, but wasn't at the Disneyland Bash earlier that day. Oh, a really big celebration at the Rams game at SoFi Stadium on Sunday.
3 birthdays.
Just turn the volume of your phone off. What time can we go till? Like 7, is that? First, again, welcome to all our Zoomers and welcome to all of you. To Mom had planned to come, but the last minute didn't feel up to it, so she sends her love. Sabora sends her love. If it's okay with you, Davey. So I was thinking, who knew Wali the longest of all of us? And,
Oh, no, maybe Doyle too.
Doyle, yeah. Well, maybe it was Doyle around before you.
I think so, yeah. No, I know so.
Oh, yeah. So
But he didn't, I don't know if you knew Wally all before I did. I don't know. But anyway, I'm the earliest here.
well, yeah. We'll say it was a perfect tie.
Yeah.
So
So why don't you begin, Daisy?
exactly.
No, Shub just said we could interrupt. He
Oh,
sent
yeah,
me an
that's
email,
right. We get to interrupt. I'm good at that.
which I've now framed.
Interruption is a time-sensitive intervention.
Ooh. Okay. Very nice.
Well, let's see. Yes, I was here before Wali was, and I was with Murshid, and I don't even know when he came, but when he came, I knew it.
I think it was early 68.
And well, I think the main thing
Early 69. I'm not sure.
I
Maybe it was early 69. Stop interrupting.
I don't think anyone really cares, but I'm thinking about what kind of stories do I have to say about it. But the main thing I could really say about him was he was so in earnest. He was so sincere and so zealous about wanting to serve Murshid and to serve the message. And he was, he was like a Mack truck in a way, and not in the gross sense of the word. So I would say he's one of the most earnest people as far as wanting to awaken and to help others that I know. Hardly, hardly anybody. And so, I mean, what stories can I tell you? So I'll put a little context on this one story I remember, and that is one day we're driving in the car, Wali Ali's driving, Murshid's in the front, I'm in the back, and we're going up Dolores Street, we're going along, and then this girl walks across the red light, the crosswalk, and she's got on a mini skirt, it's about hardly any mini skirt on, she's got stockings on or something. And Murshid turns around and he looks at me and he says, the shorter the skirt, the bigger the ego. And I went, oh, what does that mean? Of course, he was talking to me. So of course, did I have on a mini skirt? I did. So as luck would have it, a while later, there was some big thing happening at the Mentor Garden, and Murshid sends Wali Ali over to my house in a rush without any notice, come over and get Davy. So he comes over, I open the door and I've got on my mini skirt still, and there's no time for me to change. He said, you've had it. You really had it. But there was no time, so I got in the car, we went over, and we came over here, and Murshid, this is actually Murshid, except for what Wali Ali said. Murshid, I'm hiding in the kitchen because I'm thinking, and Murshid comes in and he goes, looks at me, and he turns around and just walks out. And I will never forget that look on his face. And there was only one more time in my life where I sinned like that. And so that was really more about Murshid, but Wali Ali was the one who made my day, you really, you've had it. But there's so many other things I could say about him, but not particularly, stories so much. That I can think of now, but it's just to reiterate what I said before. It really takes a huge amount of arguing. Like this guy Swami Chandra we met said, it's easier to become the Prime Minister of Canada than it is to become God realized. And I think that was the trajectory, not the Prime Minister thing, but the other that Wali Ali is on. And so I have so much respect and regard for that, because it's so easy to be lukewarm and complacent, but he was not, or is not.
Wow. So true.
Yeah. So, and I don't say that. Well, that's the main thing I would say about him, that I really, 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 really respect and admire.
So
Yeah.
I met Hero Wyatt in 1968 in New York City. And I was really on a yogi track with Baba Ram Das. I'd been invited to live with him on his land, but he was going to be traveling till July of '69. So I was free all that time to turn my life, give everything away, get out of the draft and all those things, which all did happen. And Pirulai had planned his first Sufi camp in America. And it was in the mountains of Colorado Springs. And so there was time to go to that. So the girlfriend and I drove across country to Colorado Springs, and when we got there, it was 35 people. So, not that many more people than are here. And more than, I'd say 20, 25 of them were Murshid Sam's disciples. Wali Ali, Taj, Aisha, James Picard, Paul Donnelly, Omar, Matthews, just to name a few of them. And the dances were pretty fresh. And they brought the dances. And it was like a revelation to see those dances. I made an immediate friendship with Wali Ali, and especially with Wali and Ayesha, and they both invited me. They said, why don't you come out and meet our teacher? And again, I had enough time before the date in July, because the camp, I must have been in, I don't remember, May 1969, something like that. And I remember one thing that happened at the camp for Wali, which I thought was really tough, but which I see that he mastered in his life. So Firvalai was very fond of conducting and singing in choir, and he brought us all scores of the Hallelujah chorus. Not that any of us were. Yeah, it's time to turn up your phone, everybody. If you haven't done that already, just put on Do Not Disturb. So we're singing, and at that point in his life, Wali could not sing. And Firvalai actually went over to him and said, in his most cordial way, which I'm sure was really tough. I mean, imagine, this spiritual teacher comes over to you and says, "Do you mind? Could you just sit on this side?" But then put that next to here's one of the few of us who felt the call to carry this treasury of the dances of universal peace. And it's based on music, come on, singing in tune and so on. And so he found a way to navigate it. And when he couldn't sing in tune, he'd get someone else to sing the tune. And then later, he couldn't sing the tune. So he invited me out here to the Bay Area to meet Murshid Sam, and so did Aisha. They were the two. And I think I stayed at the Menor Garden a night and then stayed in Marin the rest of the time. So that's how I found out about this incredible treasury of lineage and beauty. And Wali was there, like in that time was there for so many of the experiences that happened to me, like you were telling with Murshid. The one that I seen, one of the very few times that Murshid had yelled at me. I was already his Marie. I'd been living for free at Omar's house. He had invited us to stay there. And then because his roommate was on tour, Al Jarreau, the great jazz singer. But then the landlord wanted the house back. The person who owned the house in a beautiful place in Madrone Canyon in Marin. And so we all had to move. And then one of my friends, I lived with Ram Dass for 4 months or so, and then that was over, and then I came right out here. So from the time I came back, which was fall '69, I never left. So now it's spring of '70. I'm already Murshid's Marie. And someone says, "Oh, why don't you come down to Takati? You can live down there for free. We're making an ashram for Satya Sai Baba." So I thought, free? I asked Murshid's permission. He said, "Go ahead." But I was there for a little while, and then Murshid kind of came to me and said, "Time to come home." So that day I packed up my bags, hitchhiked. I hitchhiked from Tecate, California to San Diego, one ride, second ride. San Diego to the Menor Garden. One ride. Yeah, and Murshid was very, very kind in the way he treated the traveler. He welcomed me, hung out with us in the afternoon. He gave me a towel and said, "Have a shower, take a rest, and you can stay for dinner." Marsha's not here, and Coulson wasn't there, so it was Wali and Murshid and myself for dinner. And at that time, the dining room table was a card table, so it's, if you can picture it, here's Wali sitting there, here's Murshid, myself. And he says, "Well, what do you do with all your time down there?" And I just kind of went into I went to this beautiful place. I went to, and finally Murshid looks up And he starts slamming his fist on, beating his fist on the table so the forks are going like this. Wally's sitting there. And Murshid saying, what the hell are you running around for? The kingdom of heaven is within you. Stop. They went back to eating, and so Wally was there for that. And, that was a very, very strategic and important moment in my life. That message I received.
Yeah, you sure did.
It's almost impossible to talk about Wally without ending up talking about Murshid.
Yes, yeah,
I mean,
really.
I tried it myself
Yeah.
in my head, like, what am I gonna say? And I ended up talking about Murshid. And I think, I just want to say, I lived with Wali and Murshid right down at the Mentor Garden. So I lived with them and I saw this whole thing. And I think if I have to say anything, I have a lot to say about Wali, but main thing is he disappeared. Because you start talking about Wali and you end up talking about Murshid. And he never got off the mark in his whole life. Devoted. You should have tried living with him in 1970. I mean, nutty, unusual. His whole room, he had crayons, and like a kid, he would write Allah and then he'd pin them to his wall. So you'd walk in, it was like a kid's room. There'd be Allah in Arabic written on his wall. So I have a bunch of unusual experiences. One of which, before I surrender the floor, is I'd be sitting there and Wally would have rolled up a heavy magazine, as heavy as like a Vogue, although we didn't have Vogue in Murshid's house. And he'd walk up behind me and he'd smash it on the back of my neck. And the first few times he did it, I'd get up and I'd start cursing at him. And I don't know where this is going out to, so I won't say it, but I'd curse at him and I'd say, what the are you doing? And then, I don't know what happened. One day he came up, he smashed me on the back of my head and
Shoulder or head?
This thing right here.
The shoulder.
Okay, the shoulder.
Head's there.
Sure, no head. Okay, shoulder. And
So I
smashed me.
heard
Like I
you
said,
say shoulder.
like I said, he was pretending he was a Zen teacher. And the truth is, I didn't care. I mean, I didn't care. It's not like I put it in denial. It's not like I had to concentrate. I just didn't care. And with that, he never did it again.
It wasn't funny.
Well, he wasn't getting a reaction. But I mean, so anyway, Murshid, Wali scooped me up too at a Pir Vilayat camp. And that's how I ended there. Scooped up everyone.
Were you there at the camp?
I was at that
Yeah.
game. Yeah, we have
Scooped
stories
me up
about
and
that.
back I came, and the first day back, I met my wife at the
Right,
Mentor Garden. So living with him there are 1,000 things, little remarks he made, things we did. He loved one day, God knows why, someone's sanitizing earth,
Oh.
Murshid called it, on the stove. I mean, who ever heard of this? So I walk
Wait,
in.
someone is Murshid?
No, someone.
Somebody.
It's either Wali or Murshid. It had to be Murshid.
Couldn't be Wally.
So someone is sanitizing the earth. And to me, it looks like chocolate. I mean, really, why wouldn't it look like chocolate? Dark earth on the stove. And I use earth because once I called it dirt and Murshid said earth. So I wrote, this is dirt. And Wali told that story. I knew him 52 years. He told that story for 52 years. We'd be at dinner. No. I said, and he said, what was that? I said, I thought it was chocolate. So he thought it was the riot of all time. So I listened to that. And Wali was incredibly devoted to Murshid. Murshid had rules. And if someone stepped over the line, he used Wali Ali as the gate. And I know that he told him with several disciples, don't let that person near me, don't let that person in anymore. And it was Wali Ali's job to do it. So he had a tough job, but he, I think he did it gleefully.
So Shabda found his way through anyway.
Shabda was already in, he was already behind the wall. So there were lots of things, but mainly, if we're going to remember him, he was devoted. I mean, devoted, all the time. And used to do practices in the living room of the Mentor Garden. And, I'd wake up no, I can't imagine I would have gone. I would walk through and you'd hear Wali Ali would be on the typewriter and Murshid would be, dictating, take this to Art Hoppy. And then Wali would, and then Murshid would be talking in his very studied intellectual manner to get the point across. It was a happy house. Wali was happy. I never really saw him down. But he was unusual. You guys know him. You can't say he wasn't a straight lace. He was an unusual man. And he told me stories about what happened to him in Mississippi. And
tell this story.
Well, one story that he loved, he had a hard time in Mississippi. He reached, I think this might have been, he touched Christ consciousness. And so his parents stuck him in a loony bin. And the story he liked to tell about that was, he'd say to me, which turned into like a motto, he'd say to me that, there was a guy in the place with me, Iqbal would say, who claimed that his father had given him charge of all the flying saucers who came to Earth. And they take that guy out and they do that electrical thing. Not a lobotomy, but
Electroshock.
Electroshock. He said, and then the guy would come back and he'd say to me, I'd say to him, well, and the guy would say, they didn't get me. They didn't get it. And he loved to tell that story, And so we'd be doing something and something odd would happen and he'd say, they didn't get me. Anyway, humorous, smart, intellectual, heartfelt.
Great speaker, charismatic speaker, amazing speaker. And there was no question when Murshid died that Moinuddin was his successor. 100% no question for me, and I think for 99% of us, because Murshid at every opportunity would say, Moinuddin is my successor.
Yeah.
He would say it again and again. And in fact, I was sleeping at the house at the Mentor Garden in the living room. The meeting, what was the meeting at the time? And I should say that I had just come back from New York City, traveling with Murshid. We came back right after Thanksgiving, so it's December, and he's teaching on his lessons called Akibaya, which is a commentary on 109 God's lessons on life after death. And he kept repeating again and again, the connection between the Murshid and the Murid is in no way dependent on one or the other being in the body. And so I'm saying that out loud now because I know that Wali Ali absorbed that, took that in, absorbed it. I feel I did. Maybe many others did who were in the room at the time. And so for those of us who are, I think all of us, we could say we're all students of Wali. That connection is there. I know it's different than having someone in the physical. So in some ways, not as good, in some ways better. So I was there the night that Murshid morning fell down the stairs, and we had to take him to the hospital. And I had Iqbal's car, because he was in Jerusalem doing 40-day retreat, a yellow Impala convertible. And here was Halim Wells. You don't know him, but not alive anymore. He was there, sleeping at the house. Saul lived up here on Ripley Street, so he had come down. Wally must have called him and said, "Come down." And so it was the four of us plus Murshid driving him to the hospital. We shared that experience together. Later, it may be hard to understand, but what was happening was just a very local scene. There was 150 disciples here in the Bay Area. It was, now we're in 50 countries, but it was a completely local scene. Abdurrahman, Daniel Lomax had already gone to Tucson to start, if you want to call it a satellite center, whatever you want to call it. And Murshid was scheduled to go be with him in January. So that didn't happen, but I remember going with Wali, accompanying Wali, or however you say it, Wali Ali, and another one of Sam's disciples named Shireen Cave, and driven by a man named Mahmoud, who wasn't, who hadn't met Murshid, but was around then. And he drove us up to Oregon to, many of you know Rade, Gail Mace, her mom was a devotee, and she had invited us up there. And, I'm telling this story because it's going to lead into Amina, and it's kind of a funny story. So we were in I think it's some kind of church facility, and I was in the room next to Wali Ali, where he was sleeping, and his snoring was so loud that it was like the wall. But so we made many journeys like that in the beginning of sharing the message. The other thing too is that he had such a good memory for what had happened. Many things that I feel I missed. And I remember him saying to me at one place, he says, "Oh, don't you remember when Murshid said, follow me, do Allahu Akbar, for strength?" And I hadn't remembered that. He kind of reconnected me to that guidance I'd received from my own Murshid that I didn't know about. But I thought I'd pass it on. This is Amina. Oh yeah. So let me tell you one more story before I get to Amina. So 1975, Wali and his then wife Khadija, Mama of Amina, and Tamam, yes, it was Tamam and I. We were invited to Maui for the first Sufi camp in Maui. It was Michael Howden, who many of you know, Iman. He invited us. He was known as Mikey, and he used to drive around in his van, Volkswagen van or something like that. And, it was out at Camp Maluhia, and Khadija was pregnant with you. And what was very strategic or important in my life, and I think in Wali's life too, is that we had been told there was a really great Tibetan Rinpoche on the island, and would we like him to come and speak at the camp? And we said yes, and his name was Nechu Rinpoche, and his effect in our life was very big. I don't need to tell that story here, but it was one of the early times where we had a very profound connection with the great wisdom that came from Tibet and to the people who carried it. And Khadija was pregnant with.
I'm thinking, I know I said
remember that?
I was born in 76, but I'm thinking this was in 74 with Daisy, because Daisy, his mom asked the Rinpoche for a blessing, and he said, sure, something like that. His hands on her shoulders, put her down on her knees, and I think her water broke or something like that. It was like, that's what Daisy, we'll have to get it from her.
I thought it was 75, but so.
Well, and yes, he did snore, and he denied it ferociously. And so finally, my sisters and I and our stepmother Mira decided we would record him secretly, which we did, and played back to him. It shook the house. He finally had to admit it. We also would get in it when we were little. We would get in both his pant legs. One sister in one pant leg, and the other sister in the other. But really, I was thinking about him when I was thinking about his obituary. And
so we're working on that now. Tamam, Murali had asked Tamam to write the obituary, and then so she's gotten support from Amina and from Murali and so on.
Especially for those Virginia years. So when I was 10 in about 86, we moved to Virginia and lived also with my stepmother, and my sisters were there with me at different times, but I was there with him in Virginia for the whole time. And, you know, he started teaching at a private school called Tandem, and their policy was that no, teachers had to pay for their students. And he fought for teachers being able to have their students on staff. So their children on staff. So other teachers were able to have their kids attend the school out of that. The principal, you know, I was thinking too, it was very rare I heard him say anything negative about anyone. You know, my 5th grade teacher, he thought she was a little cuckoo. But you know, because I mean, anyway. But the principal, they mostly got along, but he would always speak in terms of equity and, you know, stand up for the teachers and do it in a way that would get results. And, you know, but he was there in Virginia. I think he needed a break from being here, but he was also there to give me a chance to go to private school and just a chance to be a teenager. I mean, he didn't say much, but he was just like always there for me. He'd shepherd me to, you know, he'd drive me in Virginia, things aren't next to each other. And he'd drive me to sleepovers, and he gave me all the freedom in the world. When I was thinking about like, well, what did he teach you? Like, what story? I had the same experience of him disappearing, like you said, but also what did he teach me? He didn't want to leave any bad impression. His mother was very critical, and it hurt his feelings, and he didn't want to leave that behind. And with students too, I mean, he just wanted to accept people how they were, and he wanted to be accepted that way too, you know. And he taught English and Eastern and Western philosophy. He was my high school English teacher, and in a lot of ways, it was easier to relate to him as a teacher. I actually asked to take hand with him at 16, and he said, you know, Amina, we have enough. You should have someone else, which was great. So I took hand with Asha, and she was in Virginia, and so they were best friends in a lot of ways over there, and we would visit at her house. And you know, I'm perpetually barefoot like him, and barefooted. You know, I have feet like bears, like him. And but we lived in a house on a hill in Virginia with the cows below us, and he would sit on the swing and just, you know, look out and be in all that spaciousness and the quiet of the woods. And in a lot of ways, he was a very private man, but he was so earnest and sincere and had such a commitment to, you know, making this world a place that we'd be proud to be humans in. I mean, all the way to the end, you know, I mean, even in the ashram, he's like, you know, we just got to get people together. We just, you know, we just got to do it. You know, I mean, like, I have lots of words for anything else, you know, and living, he he had a shell in a lot of ways, like being a private man. He could be hard to, but he was just so sensitive. And when at this last phase, I felt like the dementia really took away that need he had to protect himself. And he was just like a beam of like smushy love, which he always was, but you know, under this very smart and brilliant in connecting the dots kind of man. Yeah, I just tell you, I had said everything I needed to say to him, and he had said everything he needed to say to me, and we just completely loved and adored each other, and that's great. And since he died, you know, I feel him everywhere at this point. In me too. And as I have been looking, well, what did he teach me, and what would I want to teach my kids? But what did he teach me? He didn't want to leave any negative impressions. He did want to give me all the space to meet humanity and the world like my family, and have God, goddess as my parents, and to follow my own heart. And you know, he is me and I'm not him, and I am him. And yeah, thanks for letting me share about it.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Thank you. Wow. 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 He came back here after Virginia. Another way to say it, he was very shy in a personal way, but as a teacher, he was, like Joe used to say, a roaring Borealis. I mean, and eloquent and charismatic speaker. When he'd speak, like, everyone would tune in. And he came back here and he fell in love with Sabora. He was not good at taking care of himself at that time, especially. And so it's always impeccable teacher. So that part never changed, at least from my point of view. But Sabora came along and, well, she took care of him.
The second life.
It
He was in the
shook him.
hospital. He had a heart attack soon after they met and was gonna die for it, not the new life.
I remember being in the room and she's yelling at him, "You can't go, you can't go." Big hats off to Sabora. She changed his diet, he lost weight, and he was an extraordinary support to Moinadine, our peer. At first we didn't call him peer, then later he was the peer, the way that things had shifted, and they were always completely loyal to each other, even if they didn't see eye to eye, always supported. And then when the table turned and our dear peer Moinadine died, and obviously appointed Lee, he gave me that same 101% support. Naturally, I gave him 101% support as best I could in the way of our friendship and our work together. They moved into our home. We had an in-law unit, and there was Sabora pregnant. We attended the birth. Murali lived in our home his first couple of years before they moved on. I guess one of the great memories of Raleigh was also very brilliant. This is to Mom's memory anyway. She'd be at the top of the stairs and he'd be at the bottom of the stairs, whatever he was, 2 years old, and he'd be saying, "Cappadocia, And when he was still in his, when he couldn't crawl yet, and he was still in the, what's it called, bassinet.
Yeah.
So they would bring him upstairs to the practice. I practiced Ranga every morning. So he'd be captive audience, you know. I'd sing to him every morning. Sing Ranga to him. You know, I have very clear memories of Wali pushing the baby stroller around the block. And I think at that time, really close to that time, Tuaga was his esoteric secretary, and she'd come over and we'd all share the same office.
That was when he had moved to Mariana's.
Oh, maybe. Oh, it was a little later then. Yeah.
So Shabda.
Carry on.
Okay, so I want to say there were a couple of things. His mother, what was her name?
Mildred.
Mildred. Wali sent me to talk to Mildred and try to explain to her what a great man he was. Honestly, so I had hair down to my ass, big beard, and Wali said, "Will you tell my mother what's going on here?" Honestly, so I did. To me, she was just Mildred.
Did you go to Mississippi or she was
No, she
visiting
was
him?
here. She was one of her rare visits. So I said to her, Mildred, Wali's a great man, and we're this community, and I tried to describe what Sufism was, and it was all love and everything. And I don't know if it worked or it didn't work, but he was appreciative of it. And I traveled to Egypt with Wali on. And that's where we had to get him a separate room because he did snore.
The common thread.
And that was interesting because Murshid gave us, a few of us, oh, wow, the job to try to bring peace to the Middle East. And Wali was in that group. And what a group. And anyway, so I took him around because I'd been there 20 times. It was our last trip, right?
Yeah,
1980.
No, 1979.
1979. I'd already been there 20 times. So I took Bahauddin and Wali to Egypt, to Jerusalem, Cairo, Jordan, Damascus, so he could get a feel for the Middle East. And that was a journey. He was, he was very supportive. He never got in the way at all about anything because he knew that I knew how to get us through the Middle East. And it's a journey. It's not like you just go and you have your passport and every border is this and that. We had to talk our way out of a few predicaments, which we did. And the other thing I want to say is that I had no hesitation to confront Wali about certain things that I wanted to confront him about. So he would, to me, he was just a great man, and I grew up with him. Oh my God, you believe I said that? I did. My second life. And if I had qualms I about him or about what he was doing, I went to him. He rarely agreed. I still know to this day that I'm right. We rarely agreed, but we never fought. It was never like, yeah, oh, me? How about you? No, it wasn't like that. It was all about, and then one day I went up to him about 4 or 5 years ago. And I said to him, I want to apologize about all the trouble I gave you during the last 45 years. To which he replied, it was all administrative. He said, it was never personal. And you know what? When you think about it, I was just telling him how he should run things according to Iqbal Lewis. And it was administrative, but it wasn't personal. And I thought that was really, it was very much in line with what you said about him, how he kept things, he kept it out of the personal. I mean, I knew him 52 years, and I don't think we ever really said a bad word. And there were lots of times to say bad words. And certainly it wasn't my doing. That all I attribute to him.
His mother came around in the end. On her
Oh,
deathbed,
did she?
she
Mildred?
said to
Did
him.
she say Johnny Lewis?
Yeah, I did. That guy with the long hair. She didn't remember your name, but.
So what did she say?
She said, you were right. It isn't about the money. It is about the love.
Yeah,
Whoa.
She said that to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really
Oh, right.
touched him.
that's what he,
Yeah.
that's right.
Wow.
Must have set his heart.
Mhm. And then in terms of Murshid Sam giving that to him, well, then I went and married a Palestinian. Huh,
Yeah.
isn't that funny?
You always felt secretly that you were well into the, you were sacrificed, you were
World peace.
sacrificing yourself for world. peace.
Yeah.
No, seriously, no.
That's good,
Yeah.
very good. Wow.
Recent experience.
Well, why don't
Why
you,
don't you come
you
here?
come sit up here as if you would, and the folks in the Zoom could have a chance to hear you better. So this is Doyle, and Doyle was around before all of us. He was with Murshid.
A few years ago, I attended one of Wali's God is Between the Breath seminars, kind of mentor. And he was doing darshan. So when it came my turn, I went upstairs. And we gazed into each other's eyes and melted. Then he indicated that finish and time for someone else. I stood up and I was rather disoriented. Instead of going down the stairs to the left, I opened up the door and walked into the closet.
I did that the other day.
And he said, we're all trying to get out of the closet here.
Well, if I may, I guess I should begin talking about Murshid because I think it was, I was in high school and at the same time at the Art Institute, and all kinds of friends at the Art Institute were hanging out with this guy, Sam Lewis. You may know him, Roy Royster and Pandora, and Jacques Levy and his wife, who became Nur Jahan later. Anyway, so they're all hanging out with him, and my then the guy who became my first husband wanted to hang out with him too, but then he said, nah, he's a dirty old man. So I said, okay, whatever. I was busy sitting at Rebel Tad Borden, drinking alcohol in high school from the Art Institute, watching you guys dance at Precita Park and thinking, boy, that's really goofy. Sorry. So fast forward a few years, living in North Beach, again, at the Art Institute. And this girl moves next door that my temporary roommate was taking care of. Brings over to my house, Susan Goodman, New York City, and she's looking for something. Everybody was coming here. looking for
Barzani?
something.
Yeah.
Yes. And she went zipping around. This was in 71. Zipping around, doing this and going to Essel and going, and I already did it. I already, okay, whatever. Every time she came back, she was always still nervous. And then one time she came back and she was like, calm. I'm going, where were you? Where'd you go? What'd you do? She goes, yeah, I met these people. You have to know about them. This Sam Lewis. And I said, wait a minute, I know that name. She said, well, at least come and meet Wali Ollie. And I'm going, Wali Ollie? What kind of a name is that? Okay. So eventually she persuaded me to come to the Dances of Universal Peace that he was doing on Oak Street, I guess it was. And this was
The Monday night meeting.
yeah. So this was
Like
summer
72
summer of 71. And it was just like, this guy is not a teacher. He is silly. What do you mean? He's absolutely silly. He's like bubbling over with laughter. People had to be, if you're going to be a teacher, you have to be serious, straight, And he was like, laughing. Anyway, so you're laughing. Anyway, so eventually, I hung around you guys for a long time, as you know, and then I went to West Africa, came back, and really by that time I realized that my zikr was really what mattered to me. So I started going to Bashir's zikr. He had just come back from India, and And I thought, okay, well, all right, I guess he's supposed to be my teacher. I don't know. Too scary, back and forth. So anyway, long story short, I was reading, by this time, I think, by this time I've done all kinds of crazy things, gone this place and that place. But anyway, I was, this little story about a little bear and the moon, going to the moon, you know, and it was kind of like, oh, Wally is my teacher. Wally should be my teacher. So I finally got up the courage to go ask Wally if he'd be my teacher. I'd already been initiated a few times in Sufism, one in Africa, again from Murshid Atiya, who had come with Shamsuddin, was a friend of Murshid's. Anyway, so blah, blah, blah. So I go to Wally and he goes, okay, you know, you think so? I should preface this. Our first serious conversation was here, right there where you're sitting. Well, Wally was sitting there and I was sitting there at the table sharing lunch. Everybody else was scared to death of them except me. And it was just like, this place was just a shell. We had just started, I just finished cleaning the stove in the old house down there. Anyway, so here we are, fast forward again. And he goes, okay. So he says, so you like to do zikr? You're up at that Sami Mahal now, you know. I said, yeah. It's a long story, getting from there. But he goes, so I'll meet you there. We'll do the initiation. And I'm envisioning this beautiful initiation that everybody else has had, and so Wally comes, and it's the usual zikr, and I don't get initiated. Okay. So then after tea and everything else, he calls me in, initiates me, And I'm going like, so do I get practices? He says, yes. He says, your practice is zikr and your teacher is fascist. Oh my God.
You reminded me of, most of you probably don't know how Wally got his name. So Murshid used to take us out to dinner, and there was a restaurant called the Khyber Pass. I remember correctly, it was in the East Bay. Yeah, it was in the East Bay, and when we would go to a restaurant, Murshid would, especially in this case a Persian restaurant or whatever, he'd call who's the owner or who's the head cook, and he'd come out and we'd sing for him, and it was very. When I was traveling in New York and we go to an Indian restaurant, we do the same. I was always delighted. A lot of people were quite embarrassed by it. So the guy comes out, the owner or the head of the restaurant, and Murshid says to him, "Would you give him a name?" And so the owner of the Khyber Pass gave Melvin his name.
That's how you got your the owner of the kind of path.
Wow.
I want to tell one short story about Wali Ali. One day I was riding my bike. I fell off it. I knocked myself cold out, head injury, emergency room at Zuckerberg.
So this years later.
Yeah, years later. I'm in the emergency room, with a thing around my neck. Davey's there. No one's allowed in. The police, because it's San Francisco General Emergency Room. And suddenly, I'm telling you, I feel these fat on my face, like this. It's Wali Ali. He just told him he was my brother. And he snuck into the emergency room and he gave me the fat, wet finger blessing. And the truth is, I can feel it to this day. So I just want to. That's where it happened.
Wow. We had so many adventures together. Our friend Mehdi Khorasani, who ran the Fairfax Redwood Mosque, was called. Somehow had gone to and got an audience with the Dalai Lama. And the Dalai Lama said to him, I want to meet Muslim leaders. Can you set it up? And Mehdi said, sure. Now, Mehdi wasn't quite capable of setting it up, but he did have connections. And so he employed Wali and me to help him. And we met at the Mark Hopkins Hotel in San Francisco, right there, right in the center of town, at the top of the hill. And here it was, there were 40 Muslim leaders. And luckily, Mehdi Khorasani, he's Persian, he's from Iran. So it was mostly the people that he would know that were from his circle. And we had felt like, wait, there's nobody from Africa, there's no Black person, no. And so we were very close friends with, some of you know, Sheikh Tijani, Ahmed Tijani, like a revivalist Baptist priest, only he's Muslim, big, tall. And so we invited him, we paid for his flight. He flew over from Chicago. Tamam picked him up, and they weren't going to let him in because it was late. The flight was late, but he came in, and it was a very meaningful time for both of us. But there we were. I mean, we were, all these 40 Muslim leaders, and Wali Ali and Shabda, Muslim leaders. Yeah. So that was a very special time together.
Oh, God. Your daddy was special.
Yeah.
Wally was brilliant, and he had a heart that was bigger than, he walked up to me at the session one day, and he had this hat on. I guess Sabur might have made it. He walked up in front of me and smiled, and he took his hat off, and he stuck it on my head and kind of laughed and walked away.
He gave a lot of things away, a lot. Yeah. Gave a lot of things away that way.
I ran into him in the Salt Lake City airport one day. I think he was coming back from wilderness camp, but we were picking somebody up because we had family out there. I was like, hey, how you doing? Yeah.
Yeah, he was we had our Sufi Sashin, that Sufi Sashin form, appeared in my heart, and I asked Wali to come and launch it with me, and Taj and I did that, and we did 16 years of that together. His teachings there were fantastic, and each of us has our style of what we get to share of the treasury that we were given. But, the strength of his teachings there on the walks. He at every session, there'd be a long period where we would emphasize the Wazifa walks, not so much the planetary walks, the Tasawwuri walks, the center walks. Very, very profound. The good thing about that retreat is everybody gets to meditate. So all the teachers who had ever come, they all want to come back because it's like having a meditation retreat, and then you dance. Come on, Davey.
And all the books that he edited and wrote and helped write. And
so Physicians of the Heart, thank you. Yeah, so Physicians of the Heart started in my practice room. I was meditating, and I wasn't really meditating. I was complaining to the university, saying, why don't we have a proper text in English on these beautiful 99 names? I mean, naturally, we received them from Murshid Sam. We received them through Inayat. We had a single mimeograph page, with the 99, one word, and then a lot of the books later that I would see, they didn't touch my heart. They'd say, if you do this, you get that. And it was like, wait, that's not right. That didn't work for me. So I'm meditating, and then the universe in my experience says back to me like, well, you're so right. Could you help us out? And so there was a kind of a download of what needed to come, and that's how it started. And I started working with Basil Mukunda, who's one of the heads of the Diamond School, a brilliant man and transpersonal psychologist, expert in the Enneagram. And he and I started, we had one meeting together, we recorded it. And then the next weekend I was teaching with Imam Bilal at the Sound and Music Festival in New Orleans, Bay St. Louis. And so we're walking on the bay there, and I'm telling Bilal, I'm saying, well, we started this project. And he goes, I want to be part of it. 5 years go by with Faisal, Bilal, myself. We meet together.
I thought Wali was part of it.
Wait, yeah.
5 years.
5 years, that's right. We met together for 5 years. I'm not exaggerating. Actual 5 years, we recorded everything. We had help people would transcribe the recording. We had like 1,000 pages of transcriptions. That was a period where Wali shared the office that I'm still in my home. And I come back from these things and you go home, what'd you discover this time? And, and I share that. And then I never was able to make time, especially as my administrative job. And I could never make time to write. Plus, I probably didn't have the skill to turn these 1,000 pages into a one voice text. And so guidance said, ask Wali. So Wali, would you be our editor? Would you take these 1,000 pages? And then he joined us. He said yes. And it was very lucky because before that, for years I'd been on this case, write a biography of our teacher. No, I'm not gonna do it. No. Would you be the author? Would you be the editor of this? Yes. So then it took 5 more years. Another 5 years. So it was a 10-year project, and you all saw the result. What a brilliant job he did. And, here's to Robert. She was an extraordinary assistant during that process, and wouldn't have happened, I don't think, without your help. But he was a great writer. I love the article he wrote for Pierzia's book, Pearl and Wine, about what was happening in the West and California at the time of Anais Fleming.
Can any of you say anything?
And now the biography is coming. So I did talk to Barkat today, and March. We're hoping by spring we can put it in your hands. He worked on that for another 8 years, I think, and clearly the last few years of us working on it was when the dementia started coming on, so his capacities went down, so it needed a lot of tending. I had a sincere wish to put a book in his hand while he was still alive, and that clearly didn't happen, but I am committed to putting the book in our hands. And so that would have been his last, really great effort. I want to say that this is in no way his memorial celebration. This is just a group of us dear friends getting together, and especially during this period in the Bardos, supporting him, remembering him, and being with the family and whoever watches this recording too, to enjoy it. And I have been speaking, I speak to Sabur almost every day, and right now, the date we've settled on, we're still, it's not fixed, but likely is March 12th, which is a Sunday, in the afternoon, to have an actual memorial celebration out in Marin County on Dominican University campus. There's a beautiful hall, which many of you know about, called Guzman Hall, where we can dance and sing. But it's not, no fixed chairs. So, and that will give time for people near and far who do want to fly in. I know Abraham and Halim, I just talked to them this morning. They're in Chile right now. They said, we're coming. Saul told me he wants to come. So that's
So I want to
finish this up.
I want to say that, as I'm sitting here listening to everyone speak, I'm remembering the kind of disciple what Murshid, Wali was to Murshid. And he was, you know, maybe the best disciple. He was effaced in Murshid. I mean, that whole place, living with Murshid and Wali Ali was just like peaceful. And I bumped into Murshid a lot and yelled at me a couple of times, but it was still peaceful. And, but the point is, Wali Ali's attunement, discipleship, his ability to serve Murshid. Murshid had a lot of stuff going on. There were 100 disciples. It was like, in Yiddish, they say nishigas. It was like crazy. And Wali protected him and did the job and was good. Was a good disciple. And so what I really want to say to you all is, you know, do your practices.
I'd like to share a little something as well.
Okay, it's getting late, so.
I understand. I'll keep it brief. It's just that I met him in '94 at the first Sufi camp I went to. '95, I went out to camp at Lama, which was called Sam's Camp, and he was there teaching. Taught me the dances along with Shabda. And then shortly after that, we led a camp at Lama called Divine Laughter. Inspired to do this, partly because for years, a couple of years before that, been meditating on the laughter of God. Having a very specific thing. And when I shared that with Wali Ali, he let me know that was his dissertation. He'd written his dissertation on the laughter of God. We had this really strong connection over that. The other thing I think needs to be shared here, I just keep having this strong sense of this incredible joy of Wali Ali meeting again with Sam. What that meeting is like.
Wow.
Whether or not that's how the afterlife is. Powerful to imagine.
Yeah.
That joy.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
My own music guru, when he died, he had a cardiac arrest and died, and somehow we revived him and brought him back. And his inner teacher was Shirdi Sai Baba, the old Sai Baba. And when we roused him, he says, I was in Baba's lap and you dragged me back here. So I'm pretty confident. Let's just sing a little column together to I guess the good company of Murshid and Murshid. Here we go. Amen. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. We love you. Thank you, Wali Ali, for your love, your dedication, your friendship, how you hold our family together, how you carry Murshid's teachings forward. And now it's our turn. It's our job, or it's our, if it's your job, certainly mine. Let's carry these teachings forward and spread loving kindness and compassion, relieve suffering, and dedicate ourselves to wake up.
Waking up.
Even clearer. Okay.